Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers Walk by Faith Wednesday webinar, where Deacon Harold and guests explore our Catholic faith through passionate discussion. Get ready as Deacon Harold and his diverse guests bring an array of knowledge and life to Catholic teaching. You are watching Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers Walk by Faith Wednesday webinar.
Welcome to the show. This is an exciting moment for me, and I hope for you as well, because of who I am sitting down with today. I am broadcasting from the Catholic Media Network Conference, Momentum 21. St. Joseph is our patron. We are in Schaumburg, Illinois, at the Select International Tours and Cruises booth. And it's an impressive lineup. I think we have Nick De La Torre, Hector Molina's booth was here, and also next to me is Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers. And so glad to get you on the show for the first time, to meet in person. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored and blessed to be here. Thank you, Brooke.
And providentially, we are going to be hosting a podcast session together. So there's a little bit of pressure. We better get this right, right here. But I'm so excited about that. So we'll be doing that as well. So this is an opportunity to meet in person, and you are so well known in Catholic culture and our faith and our church. But for those that don't know your story, I wanted to begin a little bit with your biography and then what you're doing now. And I didn't know all of these details. I feel like I know your story pretty well, but I was reading that you were born in Barbados.
Yes.
A lot of people know that in the Caribbean. Your dad was a calypso singer.
Yes, he was.
Did you listen to any Harry Belafonte?
Yes.
There's an old song called Mama Look at Boo Boo. Do you know that song?
Yes.
It's the most politically incorrect lyric, but it's so fun. My kids love it. I was so excited when I was like, I wonder if you knew or listened to Harry Belafonte. And your dad, you said, had three loves, and you said it was alcohol, women, and cigarettes.
Yeah.
That was your dad's three loves, and he never went to church.
That's right.
So tell us about that. What about your mom? What was that dynamic like for you?
Yeah, so my mom was Methodist who became Catholic. So my mom was actually the first baptized Catholic in the history of our family. And I'm the oldest child of their marriage, so I'm the first baptized. She's the first Catholic, I'm the first baptized Catholic. Because when she came into the church, she didn't have to be rebaptized. So my mom, when we came to the U.S., my mom was very staunch, passionately Catholic. And I remember clearly kneeling us down, me and my brother, who's a year younger than me, and my other brother, and she would teach us our prayers. Our Father, we repeat, our Father, who art in heaven. And we repeat after her, our Father, Hail Mary, glory be to the Father, angel of God prayer. And then we pray for our relatives and friends and things. And every night, and Mom took us to church, and it was there. I remember at 9 years old, my mom putting me at the end of the pew, and she was next to me, and then my siblings on the other side of her, because they were normal kids, like throwing Cheerios or whatever. But I was like laser focused on what was going on at the altar. And I remember at 9 thinking to myself, there's something really cool going on up there. I don't exactly sure what it is, but I like it. And then I started serving Mass, which and to this day, I love being on the altar. It's like, I still get that kid-like excitement, you know.
And faith is a grace. I'm thinking about Padre Pio from a very young age. His holiness was so evident. So it sounds like for you, it was always there.
Yeah, it's something that's always been there. Some of my friends made fun of me about it, which I didn't care. I love serving Mass. And then I thought I might be called to the priesthood. And then I went to a Benedictine high school, St. Benedict's Prep in Newark. And the monks had a come and see program, which I did all 4 years of high school. The first person in my family ever to go to college. So I got an academic scholarship at Notre Dame. Went to ND, worked for a year, then joined a monastery. And I thought, I'm doing everything that God needs me to do, God wants me to do. And I was very happy there until my mom, the divorce, my parents got divorced during that time when I was at ND. And then my mom got sick and almost died. So I left the monastery to take care of her because my sister was still in high school. So I had to make sure she ate and got to school, paid the mortgage, all that stuff, while my mom convalesced. I went to a wedding.
Did that take you by surprise? You got called, the vocation was set, and then Colleen comes in.
Yeah, so that took me, because I never thought I'd be married, because I really had no desire to be married after watching my parents married somebody in the monastery and have to worry about that. But then, you know, it was we had our ups and downs. It was complicated, mostly because I did not know how to function properly in that relationship. I wasn't sure if I could be a good husband or a father, you know. And so I had to learn a lot from her, quite frankly. You know, which actually Pope John Paul talks about that in his document for women, Mulieris Dignitatem, on the dignity and vocation of women. He says a man has to learn his fatherhood from the mother. And I never understood that till I was in that situation myself.
Wow.
You know,
And you were living it.
Yeah, and I was living it, and it's a beautiful thing. And so, in fact, we're coming up our 27-year wedding anniversary now. And it was going to Oregon that I discovered the diaconal vocation.
But in the midst of this, your parents get divorced in college. Your dad obviously did not have a great conversion that you had hoped for. So during these years, what was your relationship with your dad?
I had no relationship with him. When I joined the monastery, my dad was angry, to put it. I mean, I'm the first person in our family to ever go to college. I go to Notre Dame. He thinks, oh, I'm going to go on Wall Street, make $1 million. Instead, I go into a monastery. He's embarrassed to tell his friends. Where am I, you know? And so our interaction was not very pleasant, and I basically considered him dead to me after that. And I joined a monastery, and I didn't speak to him for 18 years. So I got married, didn't, no communication with him, birth announcements for the kids, nothing. But that all changed when my first series came out on EWTN called Behold the Man. When it started airing internationally, it aired in my country, and someone called my dad, isn't that your son on TV? So he flips to EWTN, and there I am, talking about what it means to be an authentically Catholic man. So he was intrigued.
You got his attention, I bet.
Yeah, he was intrigued, but here's the thing. He started watching the network when I wasn't on. And he starts watching Mother Angelica. I'm like, wait a minute. Here's a man who's not baptized, womanized. He has 15 other kids from other women, besides the 4 of us with my mom. Alcohol, it's tore our family apart, like destroyed our family. And he's watching EWTN. So when we finally reconciled, I said, Pop.
And for those that haven't, I think most of the audience is very familiar with EWTN, but if you don't know EWTN, it's you can get more Catholic.
Yes.
And it's not very, showbiz, which it can be, but it's doctrine, it's truth. And
Yes.
It's incredible how many people are attracted to that because everything is cut away and you just have the bullseye truth. So that obviously hooked him somewhere. And I'm sure, I'm thinking as you're talking because I don't know the whole history of your dad's story, but there is a cycle of brokenness within
No, yeah. I didn't know any of my grandfathers at all. No, I mean, I knew one of because when we came to the United States, my mother's mom came and lived with us. I met my other grandmother a couple of times because she stayed in Barbados, but I never knew my grandfathers at all. So I really had no strong male role models in my life, except when my scoutmaster, the monks, and some of my teachers in high school. Those were strong male role models for me.
So was it a challenge to relate to Abba, Dad, and God the Father, or with that gift of faith that you had since being a little boy, was that a natural connection to your early life?
Yeah, that's a great question. There was a natural connection, so it was never an issue for me, but for my siblings it was. My younger brother, who was born in Barbados with me, he's a year younger than I am, stopped going to church. My other brother, who was born here, stopped going to church, although he's back now. And part of that was my dad's conversion, because he thought, because my other brother said, if marriage is like what we went through, I don't want to have anything to do with it. And he stopped going to church because God the Father and our Father, that kind of thing. But it never really bothered me, because I knew that God's love, His Father, transcends human love, and that we're all sinners and we're all weak and we all have our issues, But what turned things around, my dad was watching Mother Angelica. I said, wait a minute, this guy's a womanizer, and he's watching Mother Angelica? And so I asked him, I said, why were you watching Mother Angelica? He said, she just made so much sense. His mother just gave it to you straight.
Yes.
She wasn't like this towering intellect. She just gave you this, and it somehow attracted my dad. So he was not just watching me. Now he's watching
how
Mother
many
Angelica.
men love Mother Angelica. You have that maternal figure in her, but it really is, because I know I interviewed Paul Darrow and so many people, men, who love that direct, no-nonsense truth. And she's still loving and charitable.
Yes.
There's something but you feel this charity, this love that she won't water it down. So that for him was something that got his attention. And then what came after that in terms of your relationship? Did he begin to reach out?
Yeah. So it took a year of EWTN and other things started really moving his heart before he reached out to me. He called me. I'll never forget. I was driving home from work. Phone rang. Saw the New Jersey area code. Didn't recognize the number. Oh, it's maybe one of my friends. Answered the phone. It was him. And I was like, what the heck is going on here? So I pull over to the side of the road. And I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, what's going on? He starts talking about Jesus. So we talked for 31 minutes. We talked for 31 minutes and 12 seconds. And I hung up the phone. And I remember being angry, like livid in the car. I remember yelling to myself, who the hell does he think he is to call me after 18 years to tell me about Jesus? He don't know Jesus. I know Jesus. I'm the one on EWTN, that whole thing, because I thought he's another, another story, another lie, another facade he's putting on. And I said, Lord, if this is from you, show me, because I don't believe anything that comes out of that lying pig's mouth. I said it just like that. And about 10 days later, the Lord called me to speak in New Jersey. First time speaking in my home state at a parish 1 mile away from my father's apartment. I took it as a sign. So I went and stayed with my brother. Whenever I go back to Jersey, I stay with him. And he arranged for me to see my dad. My dad walks in. I almost didn't recognize him because he had lost half his body weight because he had cancer, prostate cancer. And I'm shocked. And he's just saying, hey, son, it's good to see you. And I'm, getting over what I'm saying. So finally, I'm waiting to hear, I'm sorry, son, right? I'm sorry for the hell I put you and your mother and your siblings through for all those years. I'm sorry I missed your graduation because I was drunk. I'm sorry that even though you were an all-star wrestler, I didn't come to one of your wrestling matches your senior year. I'm waiting to hear that. And all he's talking about is the person he is now. And the Lord taught me a huge lesson that night. The Lord said, look, you know what happened back then, and he knows what happened back then. There's nothing either one of you can do to change that. Deal with the person I have in front of you now.
And at this time, you had been on the road too. You were so well formed. And I always find that when we're in our car and it's a beautiful day and we're listening to Christian music and we have our arms raised, it's so easy to follow Christ. Everything's going our way when we know that we're blessed. Those concepts that you expect others to learn and understand, you have to live out. That's that muscle you have to flex. And it's so hard, especially when it's family and it's things that you feel justified a lot of times because of the hurt and the sin involved. And so at that moment, it sounds like it was truly mercy, God's mercy.
Yeah, and my dad was still singing and songwriting, and he sung a song about divine mercy. And I'm like, okay, I said, stop. Look, and I got in his face, like literally in his face. And I said, I'm gonna ask you a question right now. If you ever loved me even once as your son, don't lie to me. So what happened to you? All this talk about Mary and the mercy. He looked me dead in the face and he said, the Blessed Mother and Divine Mercy. Just like that. I'm like, this guy ain't even baptized, never go to church. And he's telling me what changed everything in him was the Blessed Mother and Divine Mercy. I didn't even know he knew what that was. And that's the difference with that. And so that brought our relationship to a certain level of healing. But it was a couple years later, actually, in 2000. That was 2009. Yes. Oh, yeah. There's no way you could fake that. None. What the big thing was, he actually reconciled with my mom. He came to Oregon, which was interesting because he wanted to meet my wife and kids for the first time. And but I told the kids that he was dead. During that 18 years, I told the kids that they asked about their grandfather. I said, he's dead. So now he wants to see them. I said, what do I do now? So my wife said, well, Jesus did raise the dead, didn't he? I'm like, okay. And so he came out. We had an amazing weekend of healing and reconciliation, and he reconciled with my mom. My mom was living with us at this time. When she got ill that first time was in a monastery that started a 20-year decline of her health, so she was living with us. And my father, they reconciled that weekend. I don't know, because I wasn't in the room, because I stepped out, and I still to this day don't know what they talked about. They're both deceased now. But all I know is that my mom said her prayers were answered. They never started living together, never remarried anything. But my mom never took her wedding ring off. To the day she died, she never took that ring off.
Well, the woman you described, her piety, her humility, her love, her loyalty.
Yes.
It sounds like what a woman. What a woman.
Yeah.
What a prototype to help lead.
And she taught me the meaning of sacrifice. I remember she's a cardiac care nurse. She worked the graveyard shift. I remember her going to work with runs in her stockings and holes in her shoes. Back when the nurses wore those white outfits with the white hat, my mom looked good going to work, boy. You know, but she would go with holes in her stuff because we needed stuff. And I saw those hours of overtime that she worked and all the stuff that she did to make sure that we were taken care of and that she was preparing us to have a better life than she had.
And it kind of goes back to what you're saying about Pope John Paul II and how woman leads man into fatherhood. And you look at these women that impacted your dad's life and your life, your mom, Blessed Mother, Mother Angelica, and the incredible way reconciliation, healing, holiness was ushered forth. It's just incredible. And I think one of the things that I love in the ministry that you do now today, you do so much. You and your wife Colleen, 4 children, right?
Yes.
Is you remind me so much of the little way that it isn't, even though you're larger than life, you're dynamic when you speak and preach, it's powerful. It's also in the little things too. And when you offer ministering words of wisdom to families, you say, go as a family to adoration and pray the rosary together. Can you maybe share just some things in your own family, the little way that you put into practice to help form the children?
Sure. Now, we had our kids pretty close together. So at the time we had the twins, we had a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and newborn twins. You know? So when we were teaching their prayers...
That's a lot of sleepless
oh yeah. Sleep deprivation, what an interesting thing that is. And if we didn't have pictures of the kids, I would not remember that first year at all. And so what we did was, again, simple things. So we got rosary. We wanted to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Trying to get kids small like that to sit still for a rosary ain't gonna happen. So what we did was this. We broke the mysteries down to 5 days. So the joyful mysteries: Monday, Annunciation; Tuesday, Visitation; Wednesday, the Nativity; Thursday, Visitation of the Temple; Friday, Finding of the Child Jesus in the Temple. We do 1 mystery a day, and then I talk at their level about what this mystery is about, and then we learn Our Father, Hail Mary. They learn them anyway. So they rotely learned those prayers, and then as they got older, then they took turns leading it once they memorized them, you know. And it's all 1 mystery a night. That's, you can handle it, but they're learning the rosary and and watching me pray the office every day. You know, as a deacon, I was a monk, so I actually pray the full office every day, not just lauds and vespers.
For a lot of people, I think that is why, especially those that are coming into the faith or didn't grow up with some traditional devotions in their home. My husband is a convert, but he fell in love with the office, and particularly in the last year, we've always prayed the rosary, we've gone to adoration, Divine Mercy Chaplet, and we found, with the ribbons, and that speaks to his charism, it speaks to his intellect and the way that he likes to pray, but it is intimidating because I want to, and sometimes I do. I'll do lauds. Sometimes I'll do vespers. But what do you say to the person who says, "I don't even know how to start with it. I need to do that"? It really is the prayer of the church in a lot of ways.
Yeah. In fact, it's one of the things that Vatican II called for. If you read Sacrosanctum Concilium, the document on the liturgy, it encourages parishes, at least on Sunday, to have a Vesper service for the parish, where they're praying the office together as a community. And I just love it because it's the Psalms, right? And the Hebrew, it's a Fatahim, the book of sung praises. This is the ancient tradition that goes back to Jesus prayed the Psalms. He prayed the Psalms on the cross. And you see Christ hidden, in the Psalms. Like Psalm 22, a messianic psalm of fulfillment written by David. They tear holes in my hands and my feet and lay me in the dust of death. They can count every one of my bones. These people stare at me and gloat. They throw dice for my clothes. 700 years before the crucifixion. 700 years. So we see our Lord Jesus in the Psalms. I love the Psalms, and I've been praying them for, probably over 40 years now, because I started when I was in high school and I was in a monastery. And so, and as my life, and I get older and things change and kids, and now we're on the other end of the spectrum now, they're all adults now, and how my life has changed, my experiences, and the Psalms speak to every aspect, every dimension of my life. And I see myself, my lived experience, and my intimacy with the Lord in those Psalms. I never get tired of praying them.
C.S. Lewis has a beautiful book on the Psalms where he goes into the meditations. I think it's
Yes.
well known. But
Yes.
I love, first of all, he's so brilliant, but the way that he looks at whether it's the imprecatory Psalms, or the Psalms of praise, or the Psalms of lament, and like you just said, so powerful. And this, again, is in some ways, it's the little way. It's not asking you to do mortifications all day and be, because we know that this is a busy time, especially depending on what area of life you're in, or more little ones. But these are just small things for you. A psalm, pray the rosary, just one decade if you need to, which I love. I asked Father Pavone this yesterday, and I think I want to ask him all the time because I'm really curious to know, you disciple so many. Who disciples you? Where do you go for your spiritual direction? And even your own ongoing formation?
Yeah, so as a deacon in our diocese, we're required to have priests as spiritual directors. So I have a spiritual director who's a priest in the diocese. But also through this speaking apostolate, I've become very good friends, not just as a speaker, but like at a personal level, so I could talk at a deeper level. One was Father Mitch Pacwa, who's my scripture professor in graduate school, so my Greek and Hebrew comes from him. Father Larry Richards, very close friend. Father Calloway and I text each other every week, like literally every week we're in contact. So there are men that I can talk to at a deeper level, that I get spiritual enrichment and fulfillment from, not just at speaking at events together, but offline. We could just be men together and talk about our relationship with the Lord and talk about things going on in our lives and stuff like that. So it's wonderful. And I am a bookaholic. I have about 3,600 books in my library at home. I'm buying
jealous.
books all the time. Sometimes when you look at my webcast, you see the books behind me. That's a lot of books. I said, that literally is not even half of the books that's in that room. So I immerse myself in all different types of topics of the faith. Because the more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know.
I know.
And that fuels my desire even more.
I think for all of us, that's a beautiful truth and understanding and challenge. And I think it was Dr. Burke-Sivers, I had a chance to interview him, and we were talking about the importance of building a big, robust library. In some ways, we are like in the Dark Ages. Of course, we've never had more access to media and information, but the truths, the things that will illuminate our soul, the indwelling, the triune God, and Our Lady, Queen of Heaven, the saints, and understanding theology, these are a poverty. Meaning that so many people don't have a good library that explains all these things, let alone the catechism, some of the basic things. And so, what an opportunity for us to pass on these things to our children, whether it's the Imitation of Christ by Thomas Kempis, or just the scripture, the Douay Rheims, the different translations of the Bible, and our favorites and why. So, I know this is really hard, but if you could maybe cherry pick some Deacon Harold must-have books. That's
okay.
really hard because there's so many different
There's so
things.
many,
You have
there's so many.
You have Aquinas.
Yeah.
So I know it's really difficult, but maybe just yours. I have a few go-tos that the pages are thin, they're so worn, they're highlighted, they're dog-eared. So yours that you have.
Wow, that's hard. That's hard to do. Well, I think the lives of the saints, particularly the deacon saints, are guys that I go back to for inspiration, especially my diaconal ministry. So Vincent, Ephraim, Lawrence, Francis of Assisi, Stephen, reading about their lives. Yes, probably don't realize that. Yeah, he's a permanent deacon. He didn't consider himself worthy enough to be a priest, so he remained a permanent deacon his entire life. And of course started the Franciscans, which is amazing. I think The Life of Christ by Fulton Sheen, something that Three to Get Married is another one by Fulton Sheen, what I think is awesome. I've been reading a lot John Paul II's writings. I've always felt drawn to him for my whole life. He's like my Pope. I kind of got that personal relationship with him. I've been going back and rereading a lot of his encyclicals and apostolic exhortations, theology of the body. Really immersing myself in that. I love Grant Petrie, contemporary guys, Grant Petrie, Scott Hahn, of course, like everybody knows Scott Hahn, just it's going deeper and learning, especially I've been going back and studying Hebrew, deeper levels of Hebrew, and so I'm trying to read some of the scriptures now in Hebrew. So it's a lot of different things that I pull from. Jordan Alman's book on Introduction to Spirituality is Spiritual Theology is one I draw. Hans Urs von Balthasar's book on prayer is just like, mind blowing.
To do a Deacon Harold's book list, you really should.
Yeah,
because people want to know they're hungry, or they don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
So I think that that definitely.
Yeah, people say, I want to read what you're reading. Like, what do you have in your bag right now when you're traveling? I usually have 3 or 4 things in my bag. I said, well, you probably don't want to read what I'm. Oh no, I wouldn't want to know. Well, I'm reading an article in Communio called "The Origins of Prophetic Eschatology in Light of Ephraimite Levitical Narrative Tradition." Like, oh yeah, you're right, Deacon. I don't want to read that. Yeah, you're right. I don't want to read that. So what I try to do is.
But you can start there. See how the Lord
Yeah.
brought you deeper and through. And
But why? But people say, well, why? First of all, I love the intellectual life, but the other thing is my job is to take all of that stuff and how do I get it across in people's lives in a way that's meaningful? Because trying to sound smart is dumb, actually. Oh, I can do it. I can talk about all the circumcision, divine perichoresis. Who cares? How does that make a difference in your life when your kids are away from the church? When you're struggling with this cancel culture and transgenderism, all these attacks on our faith? How do you stand up and stay strong in your faith? That's the stuff. So I could be all smart I want, but it doesn't matter if people don't fall deeply and intimately in love with Jesus Christ and the truth of the faith. And that's what we need to focus on.
the human person. And
Yes.
divine, natural law, for that matter. Just the very basics that seem to have been deconstructed.
Oh, it's being attacked by critical race theory. I'm writing a book right now for Ignatius Press on the Catholic response to racism called Building a Civilization of Love. And one of the things I'm critiquing in there is critical race theory. So I'm reading the authors of critical race, Derek Bell, Richard Delgado, all the guys that are founders. I'm reading actually their books. And that's something that's very, very much missing, I think, in the human person. And, I'm being very critical of critical race theory, and I'm going to show clearly and definitively and objectively why Catholics should have nothing to do with it.
And you talk a little bit about that in your new book. It's called Our Life of Service, the Handbook for Catholic Deacons. One of the things you talk about, first of all, the book is fantastic. You're just paging through. You open the book with what is a deacon. And so not only do you answer that theologically, practically, but then you go into a deacon's life, what your schedule is every day. I really like that.
Yeah.
You also talk about uniting a culturally diverse parish. Your current parish, it sounds like this beautiful blend of cultures and heritages. And it's wonderful. I imagine it's also challenging. And you go into saying, let change begin with the need.
Yes.
But how do we bridge and foster the body of Christ, the community, the family, brothers and sisters who are, and also honor those differences?
Yeah, well, the thing is, we don't think about it very much. I had a guy call me the other day because he wanted to help. He goes, our parish is country club white. And we have we're in a neighborhood that has this rich diversity, but no one's coming to our parish. Why? And he goes, we need help to figure this out. I said, well, first of all, the fact that you even recognize that that's a problem says a lot about where you're heading to. What brought this to the attention was all the racial tension going on, and so they started looking inward at themselves. I said, well, how can we build welcome? I said, here's something easy, potluck. Everybody loves food, man, right? Invite the people from the black parish or the Hispanic parish or the Native American parish. Just come have a potluck over here. Everybody bring their native food, everybody enjoying themselves, and then have them get up and talk about what their experience has been like being a Catholic in this parish, in this diocese.
Food is the way to our heart.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And now you're listening to people's stories, listening to people's experience. You're like, wow, they have 4 kids just like I do. They have the same challenge with their kids as I do. But they have to deal with the additional fact that there's some ostracization and some other things going on because they just don't think about these other groups of people. Honoring says like what we did in our parish, it was a German and Irish parish back in the day, but now it's anything but German and Irish. But we still have St. Boniface and St. Patrick But now we have Saint Takari Tatikwitha. We have Our Lady of Lavang, a beautiful, because half our parish is Vietnamese. Beautiful Vietnamese statue of Our Lady with the Lord with Vietnamese features. Oh, it's gorgeous. We have St. Martin de Porres. We have icon screens because now the church looks like our community.
So you're saying incorporate the saints.
Sure. So you could be an Elizabeth of Seton, but have other
Right.
pictures of other saints there of diversity. So hey, these are part of our church as well.
One thing I love in these conversations is every single soul listening can think, what about my church? Where am I at? What is that like? How can I, where I am, be a missionary? And for us, one idea to offer that I really believe is the prompting of the Holy Spirit, because it's the only explanation. My dear sister in Christ, my friend, for many years, Pastor Deacon, we would start to notice we would be on the same speaking circle a lot. I work in Cleveland, and she's a grief pastor in downtown Akron at a church there. It's a Protestant church. And she's this radiant, amazing woman of color. And we would be on stage together. We struck up a friendship. Now I think we've been dear, dear friends for a decade. She's gone on a new adventure. And we decided to do this event called Laughing Matters. We looked at Proverbs. She passed the days throughout. My friend Linda was so funny. She is also so potent and powerful in her preaching. And so we brought our communities together. She brought an enormous contingent of women from her church. And she said, and she told me, she said, my people, they don't like to drive at night on the highway. And so these are the things that we need in order for us to come. And I was telling her about my parish ladies and our community. So it was this wonderful mix of black and white women of all different ages. We got together in this church and we celebrated, we laughed together, and then we broke out in small groups because it's the conversations and realizing my son is away from the church, mine too. It might be a different church, it might be a different faith tradition, but the griefs in our heart, the sorrow that we carry as mothers, the love that we have for our children, that is so strong and powerful. And the stories and the fruit from that one event, we did it again then, is extraordinary. Women kept in touch. One woman brought the other to the airport because she didn't have a ride. This is what I think, it's the little way. It's the little way that helps foster the love in the community. And I know maybe for guys it's different because girls, we like to share. We want to share, we want to talk. So for men, it's different. But I think, like you said, the potluck, it might be the food. And just to pray Holy Spirit guidance to get through. One thing before we wrap up, I know we have to go, is you talked about three to get married fellowship. And part of your job as deacon, and I know Lady as well, is the pre-kidnap and marriage prep. This is such a tough time because so many people are getting married outside of the church. I do a thing with my boys. I'll just sometimes randomly send them a picture of a beautiful bride in a gorgeous dress in a nice church. Because in our culture, we don't see people getting married in the church. And there's nothing more beautiful before the altar, before our Lord, their family. And I know some people would probably criticize that, but I want to plant that image in their minds. This is beautiful. It's a sacrament. It shouldn't be a church. And I know that with the culture, it's a beach, it's a building, outside, whatever, a barn. And I got married outside. I was away from the church, so we had our marriage validated rather. So I'm truly not coming at this from a place of condemnation, but love of wanting the best and highest for our young people to be married. What are you seeing when it comes to marriages? Are you hopeful? Are you depressed? Are you a little bit of both?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think marriage preparation needs to be vastly improved. Think about this for a second. The way the sacraments are grouped: sacraments of initiation, sacraments of healing, sacraments for the service of communion. Those two sacraments, service of communion, holy orders and marriage. Okay, a priest spends 5 to 7 years preparing to be a priest. What do we spend, a weekend preparing for marriage for a lifetime? What's wrong with this picture? So the way we do in our parish, I think it's maybe serves as a good model. So the young lady goes to father, look, the ring, he did it, look, finally, oh, that's wonderful. They want to start talking about dates, go see the deacon. It's 10 weeks with me. If they don't get past me, they don't get married. Why? Because we are preparing this couple to receive a sacrament in the Catholic Church that will last them their entire life, not to look good for pictures. So it's 10 weeks. I'm doing a couple right now, and they've been together, and she's Vietnamese, so the Vietnamese are, they are some strict Catholics, boys. The dude they're married, she's marrying a guy who's not Catholic, but he's open to the Catholic faith. In fact, he was in my RCIA class this past year, but he's not interested in coming to the church. So we're going through some stuff now, and bringing up some stuff for him. Because, I mean, I do it in 3 areas. We talk about theology of marriage, go through scriptures and stuff like that. Then we talk about family life. Then I said 10 things to divorce-proof your marriage. And that's why the couples have to struggle the most. I said, you do these 10 things, you'll never get divorced. Oh, great. Then we start going into detail into some of these things. Then they're like, oh, wait a minute, we never thought about that. Oh, wait a minute. Then you start to see the dynamic. Because now we're making it real. Now it becomes real. Oh, yeah. Oh yes, and that if they split or they'll get during that last several weeks, we're going through the 10 things to divorce with your marriage. So we need to take this much more seriously, and spend much more time preparing these couples.
Did you implement that?
Yes, I did.
So that would be an amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So I have. I'm probably my next book will probably be along those lines.
The
Yeah.
other thing too is that so many people are living together. So how do we reverse that?
That's so funny. I get a lot of couples that are living together. And so here's what I do. It's a very interesting little exercise I go through. And I say, hey, I see on the application you guys got the same address. You living together? Yeah. Well, you know that you plan on getting divorced after you get married? No, we're in love. Duh. That's why we're here. And so, half the people that get married get divorced. And it's almost that high for Catholics, as well. And I said, why are you guys not getting more? Why are you not going to be in that category? Oh, come on, we're in love. That's why we're here. We're going to give our lives to each other. I said, oh, okay. I said, well, we'll take a look at this. So I give them this little executive summary from a study, totally secular study called Should We Live Together? Cohabitation. It's a meta-analysis study. So it takes the results of all the cohabitation studies, puts the results together in one report. Totally secular. Says the worst thing you can do before you get married is live together. So I give them that. Then I asked the question I want to ask to the guy. I said, hey, bro, you plan on having sex with anybody other than your wife after you get married? No. Well, why are you doing it now? You having sex with somebody you're not married to? He's like, we're gonna get married. That's why we're here. We're gonna spend our whole lives together, And here's one guy said this to me. He actually said this to me. You got to test drive the car before you buy it. So I said, oh, let me see if I understand what you're saying.
So you're just cultural maps.
Oh yeah. I said, where'd you guys meet? Oh, Facebook or Tinder or whatever those things are. So I said, so let me see if I got this straight. You get married. You got the ring on your finger now. You're getting used to calling each other husband and wife. Your wife gets hit by a drunk driver because of quadriplegic. You have to spoon feed her, change her diapers, no sex for the rest of your life. And I lean in. That's the kind of relationship you're ready for? And every single time the girl goes like this. Because I want to hear this too. And the dude goes, why? He's trapped. Because if he says yes, he's thinking to himself, I'm 25 years old. I'm my whole life ahead of me. I don't want to get stuck with that. If he says no, she's sitting right next to him. She's going to question how much he really loves her. So I said, you know what? You don't have to answer that. I apologize for asking such a difficult question. Let me ask this instead. If that accident happened to her tomorrow, would you still marry her? And he's dead silent. I said, you know what? Let's just start the class. Now, what happened there? It went from, we're in love, yeah, duh, that's what I hear, to dead silence. Because now they got a reality check. I said, let me tell you how I answer that question. If my wife were in an accident like that, I would go to my bishop, I would tell him to suspend my faculties for functions as a deacon so I can spend the rest of my life taking care of my wife. If you're not ready for that, then you shouldn't get married. I just say it straight because we ain't got time to play. Playtime's over. They need the reality check. The reason why he likes this arrangement, he can have his rent paid, he's getting sex whenever he wants. She's thinking some Barbie and Ken thing, oh, we'll get married when there's a beautiful. He ain't thinking about that. He ain't thinking about it. Because why? He can always get out because they're not married. That's what he's thinking. So they need a reality check here. And I give them that reality check. And if they don't like me, God, go to Paris down the street. I've had promises that come to me now. Because they heard, go to that dude, you're going to stay together forever.
But our culture says, well, that's hard.
It is hard. But Jesus
right.
picked up that cross in Calvary. That was hard while he was being spat on and mocked and punched and kicked the whole time. He says, if you are to be my disciples, disciple means someone who hears, accepts, and puts into practice in their life the teachings of Jesus Christ. You have to pick up your cross and follow me. So life is hard. What does Moses say? Moses wrote Psalm 90. Our span is 70 years or 80 for those who are strong. And most of these are emptiness and pain.
That's in the office.
That's in the Psalms.
Yes.
They pass swiftly and we are gone.
Yeah.
Like that. We got one shot at this thing.
And that scenario you played out does happen.
Yes.
It does happen. Or you have a child that dies or has a severe disability and people are gone. And it is important to talk about. And if we feel, and this is a study too, that people are able to withstand much more than they think. They have a child who it looks like has Down syndrome, and the statistics are staggering and devastating of those children who are born. But those who choose life, they are blessed. Everyone will tell you that. I know for us, we were able to diagnosis. We never thought we would be able. We didn't know how we were going to survive, but that's God's grace. That's God's beautiful perseverance, fortitude. But of course, we're afraid of suffering.
Yes, we are.
We're afraid of reality, I think, a lot of times. So we create these make-believe facades, whether it's on social media, whether it's through our escape mechanisms we use, or living together and pretending that this is the way it's always going to be. So the greater act of love, truly, is to get real about it.
Yes.
Now I'm getting fired up. I can't ever imagine.
No. But here's the thing: we want to avoid suffering because we think suffering is meaningless. But for us as people of faith, it's about finding meaning in the suffering that's unavoidable. See, everybody's going to suffer at some point. How do we find meaning in that? That's what the Catholic Church has to offer, and that's what we bring to the table.
Victor Frankl answered for me an example of that. And Father Jacques Philippe, he says,
oh, he's awesome.
He's so good. And whatever we lack, God never leaves us in lack of himself. But that begins, and going back to Peter's Creed, either you believe in God and he's everything or he's nothing. And I think we have a lot of fluid atheism going on, where people, when you look at critical race theory, that has become their idol. I know you know this because you see there's a whole theology of that.
Yes.
And you're a heretic if you don't follow suit. And that's so dangerous. So we really have to be rooted because, again, this time of deconstructing our faith and what gender means, what biology means, who God is. And that is what I love more than ever about our faith. We have these ancient documents that remain and have always been the bedrock of civilization and our country, just the founding fathers and the Christian principles. So I think it's so important to embrace that and to defend that.
Well, instead of being made in the image and likeness of God, we have a culture that's trying to make God in its own image and likeness. And what that's the lie of Satan. You will be like God. God says male and female, he created them. Well, if I'm a guy, I feel like a girl, I can be whatever I want. I could be binary, I could be 90 other different genders that I've made up that I just made up on my own because that's how I feel. You know, oh yeah, I'm married, but we can have an open marriage, you know. She can do what she wants, I can do what I want. What is that? That goes all the way back where pleasure is God. Pleasure becomes your God. So pleasure is not a bad thing. God gave us pleasure. Sex is incredibly pleasurable because God wants us to participate in, he wants us to have some joy, experience the joy that he has when he creates us. But when pleasure comes out of its proper context as a meaning, as a vehicle to our ultimate end, right? The culture takes pleasure and holds up. Now pleasure is an end in itself. Pleasure is now your God. And we have so many people sick of pornography and alcohol and drugs and transgender and all this stuff. And ultimately, that's completely unsatisfying. And that's why people kill themselves. Yeah. Well, the transgender people kill themselves, not because we're saying that we hate them, because we love them. When they realize, oh no, I just made a mistake that I can't take back, that's why that's the reality here. You know, we cannot allow this culture to dictate the pace to us. Often we sit back and we let this culture dictate the pace to us as Catholics. No, we need to get ahead of this thing. We need to be the ones dictating the pace of the culture. And we've...
I think it goes back to getting your book list and
yeah.
reading some books that will give us that solid foundation. And our heart because it's true. To be able to remember that and pass that along to our children. You have a show called Living Stones for 5 years now in the Cleveland market where I am. We're just picking it up on The Rock, the Catholic radio station. My show airs on Wednesday mornings. So tell us about that, because even if you're not in Cleveland, you can still listen to Living Stones.
Yeah, so Living Stones started on a Modern Day Radio, which is the radio network in Portland, Southwest Washington area. And I do the show with Ken Hellenius. Ken and I worked at the University of Portland. I was the police chief there, and he worked at Residence Life. We became good friends, brothers from another mother kind of a thing. And so we started doing the show together. Now, Ken got a job at the University of Notre Dame, my alma mater, right? He's the communication director for the DeNicola Center for Ethics and Culture, which is a very Catholic part of Notre Dame. And so we decided to keep doing the show. We've been doing it for 5 years. And what we've been doing recently is going through papal encyclicals, like re-looking at John Paul II, and like the 30th, we did the 50th anniversary of Humanae Vitae. So we did a whole series of shows on Humanae Vitae, and Muller and a number of other documents. So we've been going through them. We talk about faith, life, culture. We interview authors, and we really want to connect people to the everyday lived experience. We open up the church teaching, see the depth of God's love that God has for them in the depths of their heart.
Thank you. How can we pray for you? Who is your patron?
Oh, my patron saints, all the deacon saints. I mean, they're all my. I remember getting ordained, laying on that marble. They're going through the litany of the saints, and when they got to the deacon saints, I started weeping. I'm like, who am I to follow in the footsteps of dudes like that? And I'm like, nobody. I'm just Smo from Jersey, And all of a sudden, it was just proudful. Those are my patron saints.
And your dad. I keep going back to the way your dad.
Yeah, we reconcile. I think the one piece I want to say about, because that was step one of our reconciliation. Step two, what happened in 2012? Cancer came back. He thought he was dying. The doctors couldn't do surgery because he didn't pass the heart test to do the surgery, because they said he was going to hit it with chemo, and then he won't make it for Christmas. So we had a reconciliation where I asked him to forgive me for hating him for 18 years, for telling his grandchildren he was dead. Now, people listen to that and say, well, wait a minute, what did you do that for? He was the one that caused it. He should be apologizing to you. I said, no. You look at the divine mercy image, the rays are coming out from the heart of Jesus. So what God asks us to do is be vehicles of mercy in the lives of the people that hurt us. That's really hard. But that's what God calls us to.
Jesus asked us to be
vehicles of mercy in the lives of people that hurt us. And so I asked my father to forgive me for hating him, not talking to him, for cutting off communication, for telling his grandchildren he was dead. So that was the last piece of the healing. And once we got past it, and thanks be to God, we did a bunch of rosary stuff, and the cancer went. He went in for a test on December 12th, Our Lady of Guadalupe. My brother called me. He said, I'm here with the doctor at the hospital. And I'm like, oh no, he's dying. I'm thinking funeral, flights. He goes, yeah, the mass in his cecum is gone. I'm like, I know, it probably shifted lower. And he's, no, it's not there. I said, what? He said, what did the doctors say? They don't know. What does this mean? And my brother said, well, he's going to make it to Christmas. He lived 4 more years. He lived 4 more. And during that 4 years, he would say things to me, God is real, son. God, son, I wish I knew back then what I know now. Yeah, me too, Bob. Right? So, yeah.
And to think, we started the interview where he was a calypso singer, just thinking about the hymns were maybe that he composed, and just that his life became this beautiful hymn.
Yeah, it was amazing. And reconciled my mom, I never saw that coming. Never saw. And I don't know I still to this day don't know what they talked about. All my mom told me was that the day that I left to come out to Oregon, that she started praying a rosary every day with the sole intention of reconciling with my father before she died. I said, what? Mommy, that's 20 years. Rosary, yes. And she never gave up. And 3 months later, she was dead. And God answered her prayer. Well, I think she is, but that's just me. Maybe I'm a little biased.
Yeah, I know. I understand that. Well, it's an amazing example. I think of St. Monica, the person who
yes.
your mom in that person, and that same spirit of fortitude and faithfulness. That is fidelity. That is the beatitude. Thank you for the time.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
Our Life of Service, the Handbook for Catholic Diaconate. Of course, this would be a great book to buy for all the deacons in your parish. It would be a great book if you are a deacon. This is this out now? I know it's brand new.
November.
It's out November.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the advanced copy.
This is the scoop right here.
Yeah. So this is we had I made a few more edits since this
Okay.
version, but and the final version has April Mater and all that stuff too. So
Congratulations.
Thank you
It's
so
exciting.
much.
And by the way, okay, I'm going to get in trouble if I don't say we're both with Select International. This is
Yes.
broadcasting. I mentioned at the top of the show, but you have a pilgrimage right now. It's to Greece, you're going,
To
right?
Greece, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, I'm looking. Wait,
The
where
last
are
week
you?
of October.
You're right there. Are you going to Over-America too?
Next
That's
year.
different. Oh, you are.
Next year,
Wow.
yeah. Because it got canceled.
It did.
So we had to. We're redoing.
Okay, I'm
it.
going too. So maybe, and then you have the Holy Land. Or you
Yeah,
don't know
Holy
yet?
Land Aburamagal. We're scheduled for May, but we'll have to see because Israel still has the mandatory vaccine thing. So
Right.
we'll see what happens there. And then we're going to Aburamagal in Poland, do a Divine Mercy. Those were the two that got canceled, and then we're making those up next year. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Divine Mercy comes. St. Faustina, John Paul II, Maximilian Kolbe. What?
My daughter is adopted from Czestochowa.
Oh!
Yeah, so there's a
Oh,
whole story there.
fantastic.
My lister, they know. They're okay, the story here. But yes, they know. So I'll have to share
All
it.
right,
But
all
I'll be so please pray for Carolina when you're there.
I
I'll send
will,
you an email.
absolutely.
But thank you so much.
You're
guys.
most welcome. Thank you, Brooke, for having me.
God bless you. Thank you. Okay. Oh man, that went really long, but thank you for the
Oh,
time.
no problem. No problem.
And it was
Happy to do it.
Thank you for watching Deacon Harold's Walk by Faith Wednesday webinar. Tune in next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for more.